He knelt on the cold marble floor, scrubbing the same spot for the third time, pretending not to hear the laughter behind him. His hands trembled, not from the work, but from the envelope in his pocket. School fees, overdue, again. They mocked him because he wore the same torn shirt 5 days a week. But you already know something they don't. The janitor holding that mop once signed checks that built the very building they walk through. This is Almarem Stories, where stories don't just inspire, they transform how you see life. We are on a journey to 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. If these stories touch your heart, join the family, hit subscribe, and let's rise together. The rain hammered against the glass walls of Kolade Enterprises, one of the biggest tech companies in Lagos. Inside, the lobby gleamed. White marble, chrome railings, the smell of expensive cologne mixing with fresh coffee. Mr. Adewale moved slowly across the floor, pushing his mop bucket. 62 years old, gray hair, bent shoulders. His blue janitorial uniform hung loose on his shrinking frame. He had worked here for 8 months. Nobody knew his full story. Nobody asked. Every morning he arrived before dawn. He cleaned the executive floors, the conference rooms, the bathrooms. He emptied trash bins that cost more than his monthly salary. He wiped fingerprints off glass doors that opened into offices he would never enter. And every evening he went home to a single room in Ajagunle, where his 15-year-old daughter Fumi waited with her homework and her hope. "Papa, did they pay you today?" she would ask. "Soon, my daughter, soon." But soon never came fast enough. The school had sent another letter, final warning, pay the balance of 47,000 naira or Fumi would miss her final exams. Her future, university, escape from poverty, everything hung on those exams. Adewale kept the letter folded in his breast pocket, against his heart, like a wound he couldn't heal. On this particular morning, the lobby buzzed with unusual energy. Mr. Tunde Bakare had just been promoted to operations manager, young, 31, sharp suit, sharper tongue. He strutted through the lobby like he owned the air itself. "Oga Tunde," the receptionists called, smiling too wide. He nodded, barely looking at them. Then his eyes fell on Adewale. The old janitor was on his knees, scrubbing near the elevator. A coffee stain. Someone had spilled it and kept walking. Tunde's lip curled. "Old man," he called out, "you missed a spot." Adewale looked up, his face calm, weathered. He nodded. "I will clean it, sir." "You always miss spots," Tunde said, louder now. A few employees slowed down, watching. "Maybe you're too old for this job." Silence rippled through the lobby. Adewale said nothing. He dipped his mop back into the bucket and scrubbed again. Tunde smirked and walked towards the elevator. But just before the doors closed, he turned back. "By the way, old man, how much do they pay you here? 30,000 naira a month?" He laughed. "I spend that on one dinner." The elevator doors slid shut. The receptionist looked away. The security guard pretended to check his phone. No one said a word. Adewale kept scrubbing. But inside his chest, something old and sharp began to stir. What nobody knew, what Tunde couldn't know, was that Mr. Adewale had once been Chief Operating Officer of a multinational firm. He had built strategies, led teams, shaken hands with ministers and foreign investors. Then the betrayal came. His business partner forged documents, drained accounts, disappeared. Adewale was left holding the blame, lawyers, debt, shame. His wife died from the stress. His name became mud. He lost everything. Everything except Fumi. So he took the only job he could find, janitorial work. Anonymous, invisible, safe. And he told himself, stay humble, stay quiet, survive. But humiliation has a limit.
Later that afternoon, Adewale was cleaning the 4th floor executive lounge when he overheard voices. Tunde was inside, talking on his phone. No, don't worry. I run this place now. The CEO, he's barely here. Travels all the time. I'm the one making decisions. A pause. Yeah, I fired 2 people last week. Old cargo, dead weight. Adewale's hand tightened on his mop handle. Listen, Tunde continued, his voice low and oily. There's this old janitor downstairs. Pathetic guy. I'm going to push him out by next month. Make room for someone younger. Someone who doesn't stink up the place. Adewale stepped back from the door. His heart pounded. Not from fear, from something deeper. He walked down the hall, past the portraits of the company's founders, past the awards in glass cases. He stopped in front of one frame. A photograph. It showed the CEO of Kolade Enterprises, Mr. Daniel Kolade, shaking hands with a dignified younger man in a grey suit. The caption underneath read, Partnership Summit 2011 with Chief Adewale Olumide, former COO, Genesis Global Systems. Adewale stared at his own face, 13 years younger, confident, powerful. That man was gone. Or so he thought. He reached into his pocket and touched the school fees letter. Fumi's future. That's all that mattered. He turned away from the photograph and went back to his mop. But as he walked down the stairs, he didn't notice the door at the end of the hallway. The door to the CEO's private office. It was open. And someone had been standing there, watching, listening. The man standing in the CEO's private office doorway was Mr. Daniel Kolade himself. 58 years old, salt and pepper beard, expensive but understated suit. He had returned early from his Singapore trip, something about his instincts telling him to check on things at home. He had heard everything. Tunde's arrogance, his plans to fire the janitor, his boasting about running the company. Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew exactly who the janitor was. 13 years ago, Daniel had met Adewale Olumide at a business conference in Abuja. Back then, Adewale was a giant in the industry, respected, feared, admired. They had talked for hours about integrity, leadership, building something that mattered. When Adewale's world collapsed, Daniel had watched from afar. He saw the news, the accusations, the scandal. But Daniel also saw something others didn't. He saw a man who refused to throw his partner under the bus, even when it would have saved him. A man who quietly accepted blame to protect employees who had families. A man who lost everything, but never lost his dignity. So, when an application for a janitorial position crossed Daniel's desk 8 months ago, submitted under a slightly altered name, no references, no history, Daniel recognized the handwriting. The same neat, careful script from the business proposal Adewale had once sent him years before. Daniel hired him immediately. Not out of pity, out of respect. He wanted to see what kind of man Adewale had become in the fire. He wanted to observe quietly, to understand if the integrity he once admired still lived beneath the poverty and shame. And for 8 months, Daniel watched. He saw Adewale arrive early, leave late, never complain. He saw him treated like furniture by employees who didn't deserve to breathe the same air. And he saw him endure it all with grace. But now, Daniel had seen enough. He closed his office door silently and made a phone call. Security, this is Kolade. I need you to set up a meeting tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., executive boardroom. Invite all department heads. He paused. And make sure Mr. Tunde Bakare is there. The next morning arrived heavy with humidity. Adewale woke at 4:30 a.m., same as always. He boiled water for Gari. Fumi was still asleep, her school uniform hanging on a nail by the window. He looked at her face, so peaceful, so full of dreams she didn't know were dying. The school had called yesterday. Last chance. Tomorrow, they would remove her name from the exam list. 47,000 naira. He had 8,000 naira saved. He had begged everywhere. No one would lend to a janitor with no collateral, no future. He folded the letter again and put it back in his pocket. One more day, he told himself. God will make a way. He didn't believe it anymore, but he said it anyway. At the office, something felt different.
Employees whispered in clusters. The receptionist kept glancing toward the executive floor. Security guards stood straighter than usual. Adewale pushed his mop bucket toward the stairs, but a security guard stopped him. "Mr. Adewale, you're wanted in the boardroom, 10th floor." Adewale blinked. "Me? There must be a mistake." "No mistake, sir. Please come." The word sir hung in the air like something foreign. Confused, Adewale followed the guard into the elevator. His heart hammered. Had Tunde already fired him? Was this the end? The elevator doors opened. The boardroom was massive. Glass walls overlooking Lagos, a long mahogany table, leather chairs. Seated around the table were 12 department heads, all in sharp suits, all staring. And at the head of the table, arms folded, sat Mr. Tunde Bakare. He saw Adewale and his face twisted in disgust. "What is this?" Tunde snapped. "Why is the janitor here? Who let him in?" No one answered. Then a door at the far end of the room opened. Daniel Kolade walked in. The room stood immediately. "Good morning, sir," they chorused. Daniel didn't smile. He walked slowly to his seat, his eyes scanning every face. "Sit," he said quietly. Everyone sat except Adewale, who stood frozen near the door, confused and terrified. "Mr. Adewale," Daniel said, his voice soft, "please sit." Tunde's mouth fell open. "Sir, with all respect, why is—" "I didn't ask you to speak," Daniel cut him off. The room went silent. Adewale sat slowly in the only empty chair, right next to Tunde, who leaned away as if poverty were contagious. Daniel opened a folder. "I've been reviewing some things. Complaints, reports, patterns." He looked up. "Mr. Bakare, in the 3 months since your promotion, how many employees have you terminated?" Tunde straightened, confident again. 7, sir. All underperformers. Dead weight." "Dead weight," Daniel repeated. Interesting phrase. He slid a paper across the table. "This is Mrs. Amaka from accounting. 20 years with this company. You fired her for slow processing. She was recovering from surgery." Tunde shifted. "Sir, I was trying to—" "This is John from IT. You fired him for attitude problems. He had asked for a day off to bury his father." The department heads exchanged glances. Daniel's voice grew colder. "And yesterday, I personally overheard you planning to fire our janitor. You called him pathetic. You said he stinks up the place." Tunde's face went pale. "Sir, I didn't mean—" "Do you know who this man is?" Daniel asked, pointing at Adewale. Tunde looked at the old janitor with contempt and confusion. A cleaner?" "His name," Daniel said slowly, "is Chief Adewale Olumide, former Chief Operating Officer of Genesis Global Systems. He built a company from nothing and employed over 300 people. He's forgotten more about leadership than you'll ever learn." The room gasped. Tunde's eyes went wide. He stared at Adewale, who sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. "You've been working next to greatness, and you treated it like trash," Daniel continued. Tunde opened his mouth, but no words came. Daniel stood. "You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Tunde shot to his feet. "Sir, please, I didn't know. I didn't know." "That's the problem," Daniel said. "You never tried to know. You never saw people, only positions." 2 security guards appeared at the door. Tunde looked around the table, desperate. No one met his eyes. He looked at Adewale. The old janitor said nothing, just watched. And in that silence, Tunde finally understood what power really looked like. The security guards led Tunde toward the door. He stopped at the threshold, turned back one last time, his face crumpled with desperation. "Please, sir, I have a family. I have responsibilities." "So did the people you fired," Daniel said flatly. The door closed. Silence filled the boardroom like water flooding a sinking ship. Daniel turns to Adewale and his expression softened.
Chief Adewale, he said, and the title hung in the air like a resurrection. I owe you an apology. I should have intervened sooner. I should have stopped this humiliation months ago. Adewale shook his head slowly. You gave me work when no one else would. You gave me dignity. I have no complaints. You deserved more than dignity, Daniel said. You deserved honor. He gestured to the department heads. Some of you don't know this man's story. Let me tell you. Daniel walked around the table, hands behind his back. 13 years ago, Chief Adewale's business partner embezzled 340 million naira. Adewale could have exposed him, saved himself, let the man rot in prison. The room leaned in. But that man had a wife, 3 children, and Adewale knew that destroying him would destroy them. Daniel paused. So he took the fall. He accepted the blame. He lost his company, his reputation, his wife to heartbreak, all to protect a family that wasn't even his. One of the women at the table pressed her hand to her mouth. That, Daniel said, is the man you've been walking past in the hallway. Adewale's eyes glistened, but he didn't look up. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Chief Adewale, effective immediately, I'm appointing you Senior Advisor of Corporate Culture and Leadership. Your salary will be 450,000 naira monthly. You'll help me rebuild what we've lost. Integrity, respect, humanity. Adewale's breath caught. 450,000 naira. Fund me school fees, rent, food, medicine, everything. He looked up at Daniel, and for the first time in 13 years, tears broke free. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Daniel smiled. Adewale nodded, unable to speak. The department head stood and applauded, but Daniel raised his hand. There's one more thing. Daniel walked to the window, looking out over Lagos. His voice grew quieter. Adewale, do you remember your former business partner, the one who betrayed you? Adewale's face darkened. I try not to. His name was Jonathan Eze? Yes. Do you know what happened to him? Adewale shook his head. I heard he fled the country. I never looked back. Daniel turned around, and his expression was strange, layered with sadness and something else. Something heavier. He didn't flee, Daniel said slowly. He stayed in Nigeria. And 3 years after he destroyed your life, he came to me for a job. The room went still. Adewale's eyes widened. What? He used a false name, false credentials, but I recognized him. Daniel's jaw tightened. I hired him anyway. I wanted to see if guilt had changed him, if remorse had made him human. Adewale stood slowly, his hands trembling. Where is he now? Daniel's eyes didn't waver. He worked here for 9 years. I watched him. He never mentioned you, never expressed regret. He laundered money through fake vendors, stole from the company, little by little. And when I finally confronted him last year, Daniel paused. He laughed. He said, men like Adewale are too weak to survive. I did what I had to do. Adewale's fists clenched. So I fired him. I reported him to the authorities and I made sure every company in Lagos knew exactly who he was. Adewale's voice was a whisper. Where is he now? Daniel looked at him with something close to sorrow. 3 months ago, Jonathan Eze took his own life. He left a note. It said, I destroyed a good man and became nothing. The words hit Adewale like stones. He sat down slowly, his face unreadable. The department heads looked at each other, unsure whether to speak. Daniel walked over and placed a hand on Adewale's shoulder. I didn't tell you to hurt you. I told you because you need to know. Your integrity outlived his greed. Your sacrifice meant something, and the family you protected, Jonathan's wife and children, they are alive, educated, thriving because of you. Adewale covered his face with his hands, not in grief, in release. 13 years of bitterness, confusion, and shame poured out in silent sobs. Daniel let him cry. The room waited in respectful silence. Finally, Adewale looked up, his face wet but calm. "I forgave him a long time ago," he said quietly. "Not because he deserved it, but because I couldn't carry the weight anymore." Daniel nodded. "That's why you're the man in this room I trust most." 1 week later, Adewale walked into his daughter's school wearing a clean shirt, polished shoes, and a heart full of hope. He paid the 47,000 naira in full. The bossa stared at him, surprised. "Mr. Adewale, you actually came back." "I always come back," he said. That evening, Fumi ran into his arms when he got home. "Papa, my teacher said I'm cleared for exams." He held her tight, smelling her hair, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. "You're going to pass, and you're going to university, and you're going to become everything I couldn't be." She pulled back, frowning. "Papa, you are everything already." He smiled, and for the first time in 13 years, he believed her. At Kolade Enterprises, Daniel placed a new photograph in the executive hallway. It showed Adewale standing beside him at a company event, both men smiling. The plaque underneath read, "Chief Adewale Olumide, Senior Advisor. Integrity is not what you do when people are watching. It's who you are when everything is taken away." Employees passed it every day. Some stopped, some read, some remembered the old janitor they had ignored, and some finally understood. Greatness doesn't announce itself. It scrubs flaws, it endures, it waits, and when the time comes, it rises.